Oh, should we do Lilith now or wait? I'll just go ahead with Lilith now. So Lilith represents, if you remember the Adam and Eve story, and you remember that Lilith was the first wife of Adam, who was created equal at the same time, out of the same materials as Adam. Then Lilith would not be subservient to Adam because, hey, we're made from the same thing. We are equal. And Lilith stuck by that, equality or nothing. So she ends up leaving because she wants to be with him. She loves him, but she's not going to stand for his shit. And that's just, there is no compromise here. Ceres, we could find some compromise. With Lilith, there is zero compromise. She's like, you either respect me and honor me and put me as your equal walking side by side, or I'm out. So she's out, she leaves, she's out to the edge of the waters, and she's like, they say making love with the entities, like the spirit beings. She's having babies. The babies end up being things that she's planting, because Lilith is a wild woman. Lilith is really that unfuckable with, or I can't remember how you say anyway, you know what I mean. You can't fuck with her. She's knows how to fight. She knows how to plant her food. She knows how to start and stop her own fires. She's not scared of the night. She's not scared of the cold. She's foraging her food and hunting and making love with the nature beings. She's really awesome to me. I love it. So then in the story, then we get Eve, who is subservient, who's made from Adam's rib and is constantly subservient to Adam. And this is the version of the good wife that will, do those things. So Lilith on your chart is in the second house, has to do with the way that you are. So second house has to do with embodiment, has to do with the way you're going to make money. What you value, valuing something enough to work for it. What do you want enough to work for? So money, pleasure, luxury, everything it takes to be really in healthy receivership. This is your house, your body, and the way that you're going to feed and nourish your body. So when I say everything it takes to have a healthy body, that's what I mean. It stems the whole spectrum of what that is. Second house is like your house, your car, your makeup, your hair, your food you're going to eat, and has to do with being in healthy receivership of the abundance of the earth. Lilith being there says to me that you have a wild, badass, fierce, wild woman way of getting what you need, of getting your needs met as far as your physical body and finding yourself to be in abundance. What I want to mention about this is that Chiron in the sky today is in direct opposition with Lilith. Now, we mentioned Chiron in your first reading when I mentioned that the sun is transiting your natal Chiron, and I went in depth on a little bit, not too deep, on what Chiron is, what Chiron represents. So now we can see here in the sky, Chiron in opposition to your natal Lilith. So when you have this transit passing by, it could be activating your wild woman, fierce, untamed, restless. There's so much with sexuality, not being subservient, being respected. And Chiron, when there's a Chiron transit to Lilith, it feels like it could be painful. It could be something that is so in your face, that's activating this Lilith in you. It's bringing Lilith to fruition, bringing her out. I'm looking at myself in here and seeing my own wild hair, and just, I'm out here in nature, and getting in touch with that part of yourself, that what would Lilith do? Because Chiron wants to bring a healing. Chiron wants to integrate. When I say healing, I mean integration. Healing means wholeness. So bringing out this part of yourself, this wild woman, is very beneficial right now. And it might be unavoidable right now because Chiron is there activating this. Looking for healing, looking for integration, wanting to bring together all parts of yourself that you might have disavowed. And now, when I close my eyes, I can see, just even by me retelling that Lilith story, and how you may not even know that story, because a lot of people don't know the Lilith story. I had to go out of my way to research, and I read about 5 books about Lilith and researched from different authors' perspectives. And one of the books that I read was telling me about how much the Catholic Church tried to hide the Lilith story. And if Lilith ever came out in any stories, it was that she was a demon, that she was just this evil being who would not be subservient. She was like a demon, basically. So a lot of us have hidden away our Lilith. Men and women alike are afraid of that wild part of ourselves. So Chiron coming is like bringing Lilith back to your dinner table and having that, the word I keep hearing is Dumuzi. So there's an archetype of a goddess named Dumuzi who is just wild and wretched and smells like vagina, armpits, and old grease in her hair. And she's just like... Oh my gosh, like if you think about the Vikings and the men, how the men are all gnarly and burly, and, you know, Dumuzi is the female version of that, which is like Lilith in some ways, because Lilith sleeps out on the edge of the cliff near the ocean, is very Dumuzi-like, has the scent of fish and wild other things that we want to powder away and Febreze them off of us. And, you know, so anyway, that bringing that out and just feeling what it's like. I would even investigate a little bit if this were my chart and I was having this transit that you're having. I would even investigate a little bit into more about the Lilith story and feel how I feel about that and get more in touch. The next thing I'll mention here is Juno, who is really, you might even relate to her as the Eve in that Jesus story I mentioned, because Juno is the good wife who is willing to compromise, willing to sacrifice her own wishes and desires and compromise everything about her for her partnership. She is the wife of Zeus. Zeus is philandering, messing around with other women, and they're having so much conflict, but Juno, being the good wife, won't leave. She's there to be in partnership. So this is teaching us about our willingness and desire to co-create in non-hierarchical relationships where, because in the Zeus story, he was the god, but Juno was his equal partner. And I can't remember her name, and it wasn't Juno in the story. It was Zeus, and I can't remember her name right now. But Zeus's wife, that she equally had as much power as he did. And so there's a non-hierarchical relationship there. And that's what Juno represents. So it's the way that you combine your resources, your talents, beauty, wisdom, and your money with your partners. The way that you guys do that in equality. So I briefly mentioned thinking of Eve, but this isn't like Eve, because in our Eve story, Eve was subservient to Adam. She was below him in a way, made from his rib, and then also demonized in her own special way about being tempted by the snake and the whole apple in the garden story. So not that perfect after all, but in those stories, there isn't really, you know, the only perfect woman really was Mary, who was a virgin and had virgin birth and was just there and not not loud and wild. She was just very sweet. That's like the only version of that I can personally remember of a female being valued and validated, was that one version. But from the asteroid goddesses, we see that there's all these other forms of the feminine that we represent, and that we are able to tap into those from an archetypal level and weave them into our own mythology. But it's not weaving them into us because we already have them. It's more of an activating, waking them up and accessing them, exercising them, letting them play in our everyday reality, bringing those more to the forefront. It's what we're doing right now with this reading. And what you're going to do when you receive this reading is look at where in your life you are utilizing. So some of them will be overutilizing, and some of them will be underutilizing, and some of them, like for most people, Lilith, are not being utilized at all. So what we're going to do is go through and figure out what can we do in this middle world reality, day-to-day life, to bring more of these archetypes out in our own unique way. So Juno in your 12th house is saying that the way that you are, 12th house has to do with collective consciousness. This is the dream realm. This is the last place. It's like that weird place that we go when we're sleeping. Consciousness itself, with no bodily movements and no outside interaction. We're just that light. And I feel like it's the place right before we're born that we're aware of, and the place right before we die, when they say your life flashed before your eyes. It's that collective consciousness. So it's your own stream of awareness. So having Juno there tells me that this is one of your ways that you connect to that realm, have to do with being in relationship, in a marriage, in a bringing your resources with somebody else's resources and having committed partnership. It's helping you to access more of your own 12th house, your own consciousness. And I'd be interested to see where your partners is, because oftentimes Juno on our charts, when we look at synastry and partner up, like look at our partner's chart, we can see what connections we have there. And oftentimes in marriages, they're aspected by each other's Juno. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to connecting.